Welcome to another weekend in my microbakery. So it is bake day, which is my Saturdays. I put my farm stand up on Sundays, so I always bake the day before. And this entire bake day took me about 10 hours to bake all of my products, which are like sourdough loaves, brownies, cookies, bagels. So this is shortened to a 15-minute video, but it definitely took me a long time. And this just kind of shows you the process I do to bake all of those products. So I always start off baking my loaves just because those take the longest to kind of cool down after. I usually have them cool off for 6 hours about before packaging. If I package before then, I notice that the bag will start to fill up with condensation, which is not good. So I always get these out of the way first. So here I'm just getting our classic loaves ready to bake. I baked classic loaves this week along with rosemary garlic and honey cinnamon oat, which all turned out really good. So I always start off by adding them to the parchment paper, flouring them up to get ready for scoring. And then I also get the loaf pans heated up before I put them in for about an hour. So that way once they go to start cooking, it's super hot. And I did try something new this weekend with my double pan method that I've been using. I got some silicone oven safe rubber bands and I put it around the pans, which you'll see in a second, because I noticed last weekend and the weekend before that, these loaf pans were giving me a lot of trouble. When I would put the second one on top, once I put it in the oven, they would just fall right off. And so I put the rubber band over it this time to secure it in the oven. And the rubber band worked all right for me. A couple of them did end up like snapping while in the oven, but either way, I mean, I guess it worked better than before. Now, you did just see me spray the loaves with water. The reason I do that is to just add more steam, because the more steam there is, the higher your bread will rise. And here is me trying to struggle and put those rubber bands on. So once they go in the oven, I bake them at 475 for 30 minutes with the top pan on, and this allows to keep that steam inside to make sure it fully rises. And then after that 30 minutes is up, I take off the top pan and put it back in there at a lower heat, which is 450. And this just allows to brown the edges and make it nice and crispy. Once they are done with that 15 minutes, I take them out and I temp both sides, so both ends of it. And I'm usually looking for 210 degrees Fahrenheit on both sides, which these definitely were. So these were good to go. Now, if you do bake sourdough, I highly recommend buying a thermometer. When I first started baking and I was only baking for my family and myself, I would spend all this time baking a sourdough loaf and I would cut into it and the inside would be like partially cooked, and it was so frustrating because obviously the outside always looks nice and crispy, but you just have to make sure that the inside is good before you take it out. Once they're out of the oven, I let them rest on this cooling rack. This is where they'll sit for the next about 6 hours to fully cool off and dry. One thing to note is the inside of sourdough is, or I should say the crumb, is super moist, and it actually takes like 24 hours to fully cure. So that's another reason why I bake the day before. Then I get the same exact process going with my rosemary garlic loaves. One thing I changed from last week to this week is waiting until my dough is in the loaf pan to score. And the reason I waited for this is because I want to know where exactly the dough will sit in the loaf pan. Because last week I noticed I was scoring it, and then once I put it in the loaf pan, the score was being covered by the sides of the pan, which didn't allow the dough to fully rise between that scoring. So this week I did it this way and it worked much better. Now I'm moving on to the bagels. I'm just starting off with the dough here, and the reason I can do that is because I'm using sourdough discard, which doesn't need the full 8 to 12 hours of bulk fermentation. So this is why I'm able to start it the day of baking. Usually my loaves, I start the dough the day before to get the bulk fermentation all set. And you can see that is my sourdough discard. And I'm so happy I have this mixer with me because it can knead my dough for me, which is so helpful. So these bagels actually take 8 minutes to fully knead, and that would be hard with just my hands. Now we're just taking the rosemary garlic loaves out of the oven, and you guys, these smell so good. It makes my house smell like Thanksgiving, especially with the rosemary, so I'm really happy with how these turned out. Here is a close-up of the rosemary garlic loaves. So after I mixed up the dough in one of the previous clips for my bagels, I let it rest on the counter for about 1 hour, and this allows it to double in size. Once it doubles in size, we can go ahead and shape, which is what I'm doing now, and this process takes a really long time. I first start off with dividing all of the dough up and measuring it so that it all weighs about the same amount of grams each. And then I shape it by pulling in the dough into the center to create some tension, and then I roll it up like a ball like this. I repeat this process with every single piece, and this took quite a while, probably around 20 to 30 minutes. Once they are done being pre-shaped, I should say, because after this I do put a hole in the center to make a bagel shape, they sit on the bench for about 10 minutes to rise a bit more. Once that's complete, I go ahead and boil them for about 30 to 45 seconds on each side. And then I will brush them with an egg wash, and the ones that I was doing everything bagel seasoning with, I'll go ahead and dip those at this point. Here's what they look like when they come out of the oven. These came out so good. They're really crispy on the outside, but so soft in the middle. I saved one for myself. Now I start off with packaging our loaves. I always start off with the logo on the front, and then I put the ingredients list on the back along with the net weight, which is a requirement under the cottage food law. And these are what the loaves look like fully packaged. Now I'm starting off with the cookies. These were the s'more flavors, that's why I was putting the graham cracker on the bottom. One thing I learned this weekend is not to add the marshmallows in the dough prior to cooking them. Last weekend I added the marshmallow like right when I baked them, but this weekend I decided to add marshmallows in the dough and chill them all together. That didn't really work out for me for some reason. I don't know what I did wrong, but the marshmallow, once it hit the oven, they just spread out so much and turned like super gooey. And I'm not sure if that's because I decided to use the mini ones this time, but I will definitely be going back to my previous method for next weekend. And then here is me just finishing up our chocolate chip cookies. One tip if you are a baker is once your cookies come out of the oven, you should always put like chocolate chips on top because they melt in and make it look super professional. It kind of finishes the product. And then I also add some sea salt to sprinkle on top, and it really looks nice. So definitely do that if you're a baker. Here is what the brownies looked like. At this point, we have everything packaged. These are the honey oat sourdough loaves. They came out so pretty. I love them. Look how tall they are too in this clip. And then these are all of the products fully packaged together. They look so good. My house smelled amazing. And then I started on the farm stand. This was the day before, but I just wanted to get ahead of the work I had to do on Sunday. So I was just adding the menu here with chalk. Here is the final product, my farm stand the next day. I love how everything came out, and thank you for watching.